virtually Maker Faire. And this is a 24-hour global event featuring makers responding to COVID-19. That's not necessarily the only thing we'll have at Maker Faire. We'll have feature different kinds of making, but essentially it is a curated collection of projects, like things that makers are doing, and also a 24-hour schedule of events, largely video sessions that can be self-organized and connected into our schedule. So we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to have you participate. Our call for makers is up on makerfaire.com. So check that out. There's also more information about the event. Well, tonight's program, really, I just published the story here on Atlanta Beats COVID. And I'm really delighted to have many of the people I profiled in the story on tonight. And we'll have them share what they're doing and how it started and what they've been producing. So let's look at the agenda, Atlanta and Georgia makers. We'll actually go to Dorothy before we start here, but welcome to Dorothy Jones-Davis from Nation of Makers. But we have Diorio on how Atlanta Beats COVID got started. Lee Witcher, who is a graduate student in aerospace at Georgia Tech, and he was kind of the force behind getting this going, and also working on a number of key designs, and he'll hopefully share those with us today. Milt Walker, who's executive director of the Southeast Makers Alliance, I believe it is, and he's been involved in kind of managing the organization as it's grown. And Lou Lefton, I didn't see Lou yet, but hopefully he's here. Yeah, there's Lou. And he's from Georgia Tech and also a longtime member of Decatur Makers. And then we'll introduce our panel from 4 different maker spaces in Georgia, 3 of whom are involved directly with the effort of ABC. And there's Grace Belangia, also from Augusta, and she'll come on and talk as well. So that's our hour ahead. Before we, let's see, is there anything? That's our next, I'm gonna stop sharing and invite Dorothy. Said she has a message to share, so go for it, Dorothy.
Hi, everybody. So as I said before, I try to give everyone an update on what Nation of Makers is up to, and we have 2 big things that we're working on this week. The first of which is a collaboration with findthemasks.com. And so they have been so awesome to make a Makers Making PPE map. And so what we want to do is to get all of the groups that are making PPE represented on that map so that we can connect folks with each other, connect makers and volunteers to you, connect funders to you, and connect suppliers to you. So if you can go to findthemakers.com, you'll go to the—
Find the makers or find the mask?
So it's findthemasks.com is the organization, but it's the maker map is at findthemakers.com.
Oh, okay.
So,
all right.
Yeah. So it's kind of nice. So they have findthemakers.com, and I'll put that into the chat so everyone can find it. But if you can go there, and if your group is not already on the map, please add them. Please spread the word. We're trying to get the word out this week so that we can get a complete map, and we'll also be partnering with some manufacturers and suppliers, hopefully in the future, to make those connections. The second big announcement is NomCon is virtual, if you haven't heard. And so the timing is such that I think there are going to be some really great conversations coming out of virtually Maker Faire. And so what we're hoping is that you take that excitement and keep it a few weeks, and then June 3rd through 7th, bring it to NomCon so that we can have a continued conversation with our community leaders about what things are going on. So if you go to nomcon.org, you'll find out about NomCon. We're going to be releasing some really exciting information about some of our talks and keynotes coming up in the next couple weeks. And so we're excited to share with you, but just keep your eyes there. So findthemakers.com and nomcon.org are the 2 sites. But if you get lost, just go to nationofmakers.us and you can find everything there. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you, Dorothy. Just a reminder, everyone, we are live streaming. I believe this is the first time we've actually live streamed the Zoom broadcast out to like Facebook and YouTube. So there's other people watching there. We'll also put up a recording of this. So we'll we'll keep that going. So let's talk about Atlanta beats COVID, and I'd like to have come on and tell us a little bit of how this got started out of Decatur Makers. And those of you who don't know the geography, we're all kind of learning a little bit, but Decatur is very close to Atlanta, just on the outside, a little bit east of about 6.5 miles. And it's always been a bit of a hotbed for makers, and they have hosted the Atlanta Maker Fair in Decatur as well. So welcome, and all of you from Atlanta beats COVID. So, but let's start with you,
Well, thanks so much for having us on. We're really excited to share a little bit about kind of our collaboration of makerspaces here in Atlanta. And it all started with an email. Maybe not a particularly sexy start, but the story really kind of just bloomed from there. It was one of our members, Decatur Makers, and he reached out through our Google group with a pretty short email that just said, he's an aerospace engineer at Georgia Tech, and he has got some doctor friends in some of the local hospitals that were beginning to be worried about PPE shortage. And after he was getting ready to have a short discussion with them on assessing needs and how we could help. And he just was basically taking a straw poll of, any folks out there interested in helping. And our maker spaces around Atlanta are all very friendly. So we sent the word out, and networking, hundreds of folks turned up. It just was amazing, as makers do. I don't think that that's probably a unique story. That's probably just about everywhere, but inspiring nonetheless.
Yeah.
And that was March 18th.
March.
Feels like 7 months ago, 7 weeks. And a couple of days later, we had our first call. And that's when I found out that Lee was a Brit. Got to hear his voice, his dry sense of humor. And then the discussions got started from there. So, what are we going to do? How do we start? What skill sets do we have? Trying to wrangle our volunteers. It really just took off from there. We started off looking at 4 potential products. One was face shields, one was sewing masks, ventilators, and Lee was looking at kind of an N95-like respirator mask. So kind of started with there, and as happens in the maker community, people knowing people, we started having conversations with folks at Georgia Tech and some of the other universities, and other industry skill sets came in, and we evolved from there. So starting off with those 4 products, we grew into moving some of those away. So cloth masks, we had another partner organization, Atlanta Sewing Masks for Atlanta Hospitals, and a lot of our folks were already sewing for them. So we kind of moved away from sewing masks, really got into face shields and this N95-like mask, and then moved into some other areas that were kind of more in our wheelhouse. So looking at an intubation enclosure, elastic strain relievers, now starting looking at gowns. And it kind of evolves as the needs are, as we're finding out those needs.
Okay, thank you. Lee, let's bring you on. And if you're able to share your screen, and maybe after you come on and say hello, maybe you could show us some photos. I could share mine if that's hard for you, but Lee, are you there?
I am here, and
There you are.
I can share photos, and I've done one better. I've kind of turned my desk into a bit of a live kind of a photo board.
Okay, good.
If that works. So,
all right.
So yeah. So by the way, thanks for having us. This is a really cool opportunity to be here.
Yeah. So actually, let's give you some background. This is Lee Witcher. I don't always properly introduce you, but Lee is from England, as you said, and he is been at Georgia Tech since 2013 as a graduate student, and you're very close to graduating, which I thought was graduating, meaning finishing your dissertation and getting a PhD. But when the campus closed down and you went home, what was your first thought that you were going to do?
Well, I was for a day, I was super happy that I was going to be able to focus on my dissertation and nothing else. And that rapidly got replaced by this desire to try and help the Atlanta area with PPE needs. All of us have lots of friends, a load of whom work in some medical sector, and there's just too many anecdotes about PPE issues to ignore. And so I mean, yeah, technically I started the ball rolling, but I think I just happened to be the first one by hours. It would have been someone of the other amazing members of our group for sure.
Yeah, that's great. So walk us by, let's start with the intubation enclosures. Actually, any order you want, but the three things that I kind of got to follow you on was the intubation enclosures, face shields, and then the N95 like respirator mask.
Sure. Do I just click share screen or?
Yeah, and then choose like the browser window that you have.
Okay. Screen one. Probably going to do. Okay. Is this coming through? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's assembling an intubation enclosure. It's essentially a series of 6 polycarbonate panels which are CNC cut, and then one of the big requirements was to do away with fasteners so that the whole thing could be sanitized really easily. So I came up with these snap fit connectors, which is the row of 8, the column of 8, if you can see. So they're nice kind of semi-rigid molded parts which grab hold of the polycarbonate and snap into those little holes there in the corners. And then they also have these portholes which you can hook over sterile sleeves, which are a disposable item already in the hospital. So rather than have another part to sanitize, it kind of clips around that ring which is snapped into the hole, and gives you a kind of sanitary way to get in to intubate and extubate patients. And then that orange strip there is just to hold the whole thing together. So that's Ali, one of our amazing volunteers. That's the final assembled kind of part that we.
So it's flat packed.
Yeah, so it's flat packed. So they could have 50 of them stored in a closet somewhere for a whole hospital. I don't know how many they use, to be honest, across the departments. This is what 6 of them flat packed looks like. That's what I look like when I've been assembling them for days. And then somewhere in here, okay, so then here's those 6 delivered to Emory University Hospital in Midtown. And actually that fella there on the right-hand side, his name's Dr. Jay Sanford. He's one of my friends who works at Emory who expressed the need for these things. And it was actually originally a Taiwanese doctor in the Philippines who had this idea. Right. And we were just one of many who remixed it, and this was our version.
Okay, great.
So shall I do
face mask?
Face masks? Okay, so there's this handsome fella sporting an ABC face mask. It's one of the big requirements for the face mask was driven by the reports I'd had from Jay about the fact that they were bleach wiping disposable N95 masks for weeks. And so whereas we could maybe focus efforts into finding more of these disposable masks, my approach was more along the lines of, can we give them something that can be washed a ton of times, which is a plastic part, or in this case a plastic and a rubber part, with the filter medium being the only disposable item. So here you see an early prototype on my dashboard. On the left-hand side, you see a silicone rubber seal that goes up against your face. And then the gold and the green parts are the kind of main plastic shell parts. And then in between those parts is sandwiched a filter, which you see on the right-hand side, which can either be certified filter medium, which is what we have. We got a huge donation from a company in Pennsylvania who gave us probably 20,000 masks worth of filter, like raw filter medium, what's inside a NIOSH certified mask. Or you could also put in several plies of furnace filter material. So 3M Filtrete 1900s gives you 95% virus filtration. 4 plies gives you 98%. And then there's a ton of resources that people have worked on for figuring out what other materials you can use. So I wanted to show you, I don't know if it's possible or if time permits, but can I like unshare my screen and show you what it looks like? How to do that is another question.
Just hit stop sharing. It should be where you hit sharing. It should say stop sharing on your screen or on the top there. Yeah. Well, no, you're still sharing.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh,
There you go.
awesome. Okay, so welcome to my humble abode. Okay, so the first part here is the silicon seal. And so this is like looks like a Mento. It's got some nice blue pigment added to it. And then that's made from these 3 molds. So those are urethane molds, which started off life as ABS with an acetone smooth 3D printed parts. And then they've now become molded molds, which is like Inception or something. And then the second part of the mask is the inner shell. So this is a urethane plastic inner shell. You could 3D print this, but we're set up for molding right now. And that's molded from this silicon rubber mold. And then the third major part is the outer plastic shell. This is actually an SLA printed master pattern for making a mold. And then here's the mold for that. My other half says it looks like a happy poo, which brings lots of joy to our household. And then the other 2 big parts of the mask are a gasket. So this is made from a small mold with the kind of dregs of the silicon from when you pour the seal, and then here's the filter. So we provide a ton of the filter material to the end user, and then they use the inner shell to trace that part to then cut out, rather than us have to have another dirty, potentially contaminated process. So yes, that's the mask. We're set up right now. Actually, earlier today, we were meant to do our first group casting session. It's going to be tomorrow now. So we've got 4 volunteers we're going to train and potentially send them home with the molds and a ton of resin and just say, hey, when you've got a minute, can you chunk out 10 masks? And then in the meantime, we'll keep making molds and then pouring parts in-house and just try and decentralize the process as much as possible to manufacture as much as possible. So that's the mask.
Okay, and how long does it take to dry, or what's the start to end?
The seals take about 20 minutes to dry, and the plastic shell parts take about 15 minutes to dry. And so what we do is one person will be set up to pour maybe 5 sets of molds at one time, and then demold in maybe 10 minutes and then go again. So you could do that cyclically, or you could do it once an hour or something. Right.
We have one question come in already that how do you design for fit? And I think that's partly the rubber thing there, but it's also, what about small and medium and large and that kind of thing?
So the reason why this is being released this week and not kind of March the 20th, like a couple of days after said we started, is for that reason. Like that is the hardest thing about this mask, is how do you make it fit a ton of faces? So I had a metric of trying to fit 5 different faces before going to larger manufacturing runs. I went through probably 8, 9, 10 iterations before coming upon the addition of, like you say, this kind of front panel here. It's hard to tell, but there's a kind of, it's not quite a plane because it's a curved surface, but this a flange, I guess you would call it, butts up against the face, and from the inside you can actually see it making a seal. And so this conforms to a lot of different faces, including my bearded, robust face, if you like, and you know, skinny faces. So once we got over the hurdle of making it fit multiple different faces, we then kind of allowed ourselves to move on to the manufacturing stage.
Okay. So do you want to talk about face shields then?
Face shields, yeah. So initially, well, we have a couple of different efforts. Some of the other partners, Maker Station in Marietta, Roswell Fire Labs, and the Geek Space in Gwinnett, they have a massive effort, and by far the most successful effort right now for getting face shields out. What they've done is incredible, and they got going really early, and they've made a real dent in the problem for the Atlanta area. And that was just taking designs that already existed and were proven and running with them. And that was what was really needed at the time. And then in parallel with that, because, you know, there's a general theme with my work, which is molding and casting, we've had a parallel effort to kind of tool up for molding and casting frames instead. So that has borne with, but this has been for the most part between me and Skylar. Hi Skylar, if you're watching. And we've basically redesigned this. Hang on, I'll bring it to you. It looks like a Prusa, kind of like a Prusa frame, because it was based on a Prusa frame, but it doesn't have ear holes at the back. It has these pegs, which are much easier to demold, and they don't damage the mold as much as the pegs do. The part has rounded corners everywhere, so it doesn't dig into the mold and tug on the mold when it comes out. It also, we're using the 3-peg design so that you can make the visor with a 3-hole punch. And also another big one is the part is exactly 2 fluid ounces. So I tweaked all sorts of stuff to make it exactly 2 fluid ounces, just to make pouring a little bit easier on the back end. So that's the face shield frame. And so we've called this the ABC frame, but it's really a kind of heavily modified Prusa frame.
And again, you went from 3D printing to molding and casting, and the reason was mainly that you thought sort of it was faster.
Which part was faster? The
molding and casting.
Yeah, I mean, you can sit there, like Skylar literally sits there with, right now she has a couple dozen molds, and knowing Skylar, she's probably got resin in all of them. And, you know, and they all get demolded after 20 minutes of sitting, and then you just spray a little bit of mold release in, mix another batch, and pour again. It's right. A lot quicker, but obviously there's a lot more what we would call in the industry NRE, non-recurring engineering, to get to that point.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Lee. Let me bring in Milt. Good to see you, Milt. And Milt, you kind of jumped in and began organizing processes or managing the incoming requests and the production, the growing production, and matching those two. Can you talk a little bit about how you did that?
Yeah, when Lee and subsequently when sent out another email, looking for some help, I started to sort of think of like, how is this going to be done, right? There's a lot of stuff to organize. There's a lot of makers. There's a lot of maker spaces. And I just kept thinking like, how are we going to synchronize everybody together and sort of be productive? And, Erm and I started looking at different tools to be able to do that with. And we started looking at Trello and started looking at a couple of other program management tools to try to synchronize things. And I ended up back on Trello, which fortunately they gave us a lot of support. Atlassian gave us a lot of support, and started looking at how do you integrate the different pieces that had been coming together, like the request piece from the web page, and then how are we going to get things, from the request to being built and then being delivered. And so I started figuring out a workflow within Trello, and then quickly realized that I was going to have to do some other things on top of Trello in order to make those pieces all come together. And so I started using Zapier and building some automations that would tie together the Google Sheets and the forms and stuff that were on the front end, and be able to expose sort of this workflow that would happen in the middle, where maker spaces would have to see, okay, well, this is a sort of like an order that came in, we package this order, and then it moves on to the delivery process. And so tying all those different pieces together took a little while to do. And so it was really interesting. It was a really great learning experience for me, because I had never done automation and used Zapier before, but I learned a whole new skill set doing this. It was very interesting. And so working with the rest of the team, trying to figure out, what made sense, what worked, what was, allowed them enough flexibility to where they weren't sort of constrained into, a process, really helped move things along. And so there was a lot of sort of back and forth between the teams on, what worked, what didn't, what they wanted to see and what they didn't want to see. And my whole goal was to try to minimize the, as much back and forth between a request all the way down the pipeline to a delivery of that request. So it's not perfect, but it's helped.
Yeah, Milt, I think you or someone told me that, you start off as a small group, you're using, like in this case, Google Groups to go back and forth. And it just starts to explode, and you can't use email any longer to coordinate it.
Yeah, it was amazing. So when we first started, we were on Google Groups, and I remember it might have been a note that Lee or maybe Tanju from the MakerStation said, we've got to get off of Google Groups because it was not threaded. It was all sort of one email thread, and it was crazy. So we ended up moving to Slack, and then in conjunction with moving to Slack, we started building out this Trello workflow. So I think, making those changes really helped the team to be able to coordinate things a little bit better. So it was really interesting. It was a great growth experience, I think, for me. And I think working with the team and working with the larger maker community, now we sort of have a framework. Like if anything like this ever happens again, there's sort of a framework to organize, whether it's using Trello or some other tool or whatnot, but we sort of know that there's a pipeline or there's some kind of process flow that needs to happen, and we've got to be synchronized in how that works. So it was very interesting.
I think that sounds like a great topic too for both for virtually Maker Faire and also for NamCon. I think sharing those best practices of organization. I think that's one thing when we're all so much doers that sometimes we don't think about what it takes to actually get everything from the doing to the finish line. And that's the number one thing I've been hearing from a lot of different groups that we've been talking to about this process of figuring out, like, how do we communicate best with each other? How do we make sure we're not doing things that are redundant or that makes sense? So thank you for that, and I really hope you do share your best practices with the rest of the community.
Yeah. I mean, I recall Lee signaling you. I says, that it's easy to look at the objects we're making and talk about that as innovation, but he credited you with really organizing the process around this so that it's scaled and you can work with lots of other people. Thank you, Milt.
All kinds of makers.
Yeah, it does. Lou, let me just check in briefly with you. Lou's from Georgia Tech, and basically, the campus shut down except for essential research, and but there is some things going on there. But you've what's your observation seeing this kind of work coming out of the community?
Yeah, thanks, Dale. Well, I'm just super proud, actually, is my initial feeling of all the makers, not just in Atlanta, but nationally, internationally. It's been an impressive display of the things that we already knew we could do, but now I think the world is seeing some of that capability. ABC in 5 weeks has had over 10,000 PPE products. That would be 6,667 Ps and 333 Es. So that's a lot. No, but seriously, it's gone to area hospitals. It's gone to places outside the state of Georgia. And at Georgia Tech, we've had a lot of partnerships with ABC in sort of informal ways. So everything was happening fast. Georgia Tech had its own efforts. And the connections between the maker community and Georgia Tech were, I think, really very fruitful in terms of supply chain issues. We worked with Tanju and others from the Maker Station on some PET. There was currently there's sort of an interesting pivot, I think, as the supply chains for some of the basic PPE are starting to loosen up. They're not there yet, but we're seeing an increase in supply. Things are being able to be purchased. There's a lot of folks pivoting to swabs, and even in the space of vaccines, we're potentially there are going to be shortages around glass vials or syringes as we move into the next phase of this. So we're really looking in the long haul around how the makers can, not just in the initial surge of helping the frontline healthcare workers and first responders, but continuing to help as this becomes, I think, a much bigger story. And so Georgia Tech and the maker community in Atlanta have always had a tight relationship, and this has just reinforced it.
Great, thank you. Well, let me introduce our panel, or have them introduce themselves one at a time here. I'm just going to go across the top. I have William Stryka, and I think you're from Roswell Fire Station, and you said earlier that was north of Atlanta, so or Fire Lab. But please introduce yourself and tell us a bit of how you connected to the ABC and what you guys are doing.
So yeah, I'm William Stryka. I'm the executive director of Roswell Fire Labs, just about 20 minutes north of Atlanta. I kind of got connected with ABC through the Maker Station, which is a makerspace in Marietta, northwest of Atlanta. I mostly just got contacted by Sean Mills. He's kind of the communication guy for ABC. And they've been doing a lot of fabrication in-house. They have a huge CNC router and a laser cutter. They've been doing a lot of the visors for the face shields on. And, he just kind of reached out to me to see if our space wanted to get involved with the overall initiative. And initially, we kind of started doing it just with like 3D printing. We've got a bunch of 3D printers, and we figured, hey, we'll just, churn out a bunch of parts for the cause and donate those. Effort. I kind of have a big empty workshop with not a lot of people in it right now. So I kind of made the strategic decision early on to kind of pivot our space as just a hub for intaking everything that people are 3D printing, as opposed to being an output source myself. And so that's kind of what we're doing currently, is everybody who's 3D printing pretty much anything that gets put together for PPE comes to us, and we sanitize it. We either do an IPA dunk or a bleach dunk, and then dry it all out, individually bag it and ship it out from here. So that's kind of how I got involved and what we're currently doing.
That's great. Let me introduce Randy Farmer. Hello, Randy. Thanks for being here with us today. Can you tell us a bit about what you're doing?
Sure. So I've been working with Tanju at the Maker Station. I'm one of the founding members there. I also used to be on the board of directors of another Atlanta space, Freeside Atlanta. Freeside actually, unfortunately, is in the middle of a move right now and has not been able to participate much in ABC, but a lot of their members are 3D printing frames for us and getting them to us. But I'm in the Marietta area now, and one of the members there. I've been running a lot of the CNCs, teaching people how to use the laser, and communicating with other regional spaces and efforts. So the maker community is large, but it's also a really small family. We all know each other. So hooked up with the folks in Huntsville, we were able to do some horse trading and got some of our PET that came in. They had face shield frames. We had face shield material. Obviously, it made sense to get the chocolate and peanut butter together. And we got a lot of their injection molded frames that they were spinning up for, and we got the material to make face shields. I also, coordinated and did a lot of best practice knowledge transfer with the folks coming out of South Florida, Ian and Andrea, making sure that, we're trading a lot of information about how's the best way to handle this material. How have you guys found, what works for seeing this, what works for lasering this? Obviously, it's tough to CNC thin material, so we converted our CNC table over to a vacuum table. I've actually got 3 shop vacs running under it right now, sucking the thin PET down so we can cut lenses out of it. So it'll be interesting to turn our space back into a makerspace for members to come in and use. Now that we've kind of purpose built and modified a lot of our tooling to make medical equipment. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Randy. Let's move on to Josh Reddick.
Hey,
Welcome.
First, thanks everybody for having me, and thank you guys for doing this. I'm from Geekspace Gwinnett. I'm just one of the members. We're kind of in the northeast part of the Atlanta metro area. We started off doing, kind of the same as William at Roswell and at the Marietta space and the Decatur space. We were just doing the things ourselves, and then we kind of became part of the group. And just like others have pivoted, we pivoted into supplier. We had delivered, several hundred face shields and tons of cloth masks ourselves. But then as we had assembly volunteers and delivery volunteers working out of Roswell and Marietta and Decatur, we just concentrated on 3D printing frames and laser cutting plastic. We got additional 3D printers on loan from Georgia State since their campus was shut down, and we've run them 24/7 until they break for 7 weeks now. I don't know the count, but it's well over 1,000 frames printed out of our space. And then I know that we've crossed 9,000 shields cut or something like that. So, and that's kind of our story. We're just feeding the network parts so that they can get to the right people.
Hey, thank you very much, Josh. And Dawn Puckett. Now, tell us about where you're from and about what your space is. You're muted. There we go.
Hey,
now we can hear you.
We're with Geekspace, and I think Josh pretty much covered everything.
Okay. Okay,
and
good.
I'm Gil.
This is our laser guy.
All right. Okay, good. All right. Well, thank you. Let me go to Grace then. Grace is from Augusta and the clubhouse. Hi, Grace. How are you?
Hi, Dale. I'm good. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah.
Hey, guys.
Tell us a bit about what you're doing in Augusta.
A lot of my friends on the screen. So I helped co-found the clubhouse in Augusta, a makerspace, collaborative workspace as well. We run an accelerator. We do a lot of things in the startup entrepreneur space as well as supporting our makers. We have the hobbyist maker as well as the entrepreneur maker. And so I've known Dale indirectly and Dorothy and Lou and Milton. It's like Fred Rogers here. I see all these friends of mine on the screen. And we really did a lot of kind of what you guys were doing. Our thing was we got approached by a physician earlier in March if we could make a mask. And so our team started prototyping masks and took a variation of the Montana mask and created a filter with it, a disposable filter. And we looked at it from an economic development standpoint because we were in touch with a lot of our community related to jobs and what it looks like to re-employ some of our makers that were either now unemployed or we're also looking to contribute, but we wanted to compensate them for that. And so our particular model is blending sort of the opportunity to hire our makers through a combination of donations and proceeds that benefit from us getting some grants and then being able to pay for not only the raw materials, but to recycle the funds back into our community. Not full-time jobs, not permanent jobs, but really empowering our members and even people that aren't our members, but just want to help in the maker community. And so we've been churning out the masks and donating them back to first responders and getting sponsors to sort of underwrite those costs. And we have over 1,000, and we're a smaller space. So we don't turn them out as quickly as you guys are, but we're actually scaling it as a true startup to be able to mass produce these for the long term.
Grace, you told me there's a lot of medical facilities in Augusta.
Yeah, so Augusta, Georgia is the home of the Medical College of Georgia. So it's the public medical school for the state. So we have that school. We have a huge military installation at Fort Gordon with the Eisenhower Hospital. So we have a lot of veterans and soldiers that come through. And we have over a dozen other independent healthcare systems that are here, public and private. And so medical community is literally one of the main pillars in Augusta, Georgia. You know, for whatever it's worth, golf is here as well, for people that know us outside of the region. But the medical community, the first responders, the essential workers are all going to be benefiting from the masks that we're producing. And we know that there are, you know, regulations with some of this product going into the healthcare companies or healthcare hospitals. And so we've actually worked with an attorney, getting the legalese for that, making sure that we have all of our metrics met, getting testing done, and making as good of a product as possible.
Mm-hmm. And have the hospitals been reaching out to you at all?
Yeah, I mean, this was talk about reverse startup. So we had the customer come to us. So our customer discovery was they were our beta testers, and we early on documented it all in some videos. I'm happy to share with you guys. They were our testers. So we had the doctors come in, the firefighters, the policemen, and they practiced using the mask. We had them tested with what's called the sucralose test, where they actually pumped in a sugar scent to see if they could smell it. So we knew that our filters were working. I know, let's see, Lee was talking earlier about how do you make different versions of it for different size faces. And so the malleableness of our product allows it to secure to the face if you put it in warm water. And we did that intentionally, so it actually softens up the material a little bit. And we're looking at prototyping for a smaller mask, again, mostly for nurses and female people that just ultimately we have smaller faces. And then a pediatric version will probably be version 3.0.
Okay. Just a question came in from all the panels. You know, what's the size of your space?
I'll say our space is, our entire space is about 7,000 square feet. And our maker space part of it is about 25 to 30%. We actually have 2 spaces that we can use, but we decentralized it. So all of our makers are, because of the shelter in place, our space is considered an essential space. So it's open, but everybody really wanted to shelter in place in their homes and garages. And so we wore the Milton hat as well. So we put on our logistics platform. Eric Parker, our business partner here, really spearheaded that. And so we actually have a courier network that goes around a 30-mile radius 2 or 3 times a week and picks up the material, you know, social distancing, drops off the material. And then twice a week, we go to the first responders and deliver the material and deliver the finished product to them. So our space is sort of a funny number.
Yeah. Okay. Can I ask can you talk a bit about the ABC's relationship with the medical communities, the Emory Medical Center and other places in Atlanta? What's the back and forth been like?
Sure. So Lee had started with having a relationship with Emory, and just through our network, we had some other folks that had relationships with some of the other hospitals as well. And so at the very beginning, when we were looking at what products to do, there was an attempt to at least get some feedback. You know, what are you looking for? What works? What features would you like? And as time went on, we just realized that they were really busy. And so it was really difficult to get immediate feedback. And we really were trying to get things out as quickly as possible. So we ended up making some choices, and we found that whatever we made, we found hospitals, nurses, emergency units, ambulances, folks would take what we made.
Okay, good. Lee, have you gotten direct feedback from, your friend is a doctor and others about, what's good enough and how to get there?
I think there's been a lot of, I'm trying to think of a good word, but I think what's been deemed acceptable, the standards have slipped as the time's gone on, and everything we do is delivered with a disclaimer that says that this is obviously not made in a medical factory or to a particular set of standards, which I think is the same for everybody everywhere doing this right now. We've had a few bits of technical feedback, what's comfortable, more comfortable than other things. We've had a couple of like snags on a couple of parts, which we rectify, and then but in general, everything has been overwhelmingly thankful and positive, and these people, bless them, on the front lines are just so slammed that I don't think they have time to really think about giving any form of detailed feedback, because it's their mind's elsewhere.
Yeah, fair enough. I do want to remind you, if you have questions, please post them. Skylar, you're in the attendee. I'm going to promote you to a panelist. We'd love to have you, if you don't mind, say a few words about the mold making you're doing. Where is Skylar? There you are. Can you hear us?
Yeah, it kicked me out for a sec. What was it?
Okay. Oh, I just tell us a bit about making the molds at home, the casting process.
All right. I'm gonna try and do the same tech thing that Lee was trying to do. Okay.
Oh, there you are. Hi, Skylar.
Hi. So I'm doing this in my guest bedroom in the floor.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've actually sat here and just poured all these while I watched, but
I'm just going to say I absolutely called it.
What'd you see, about 20 there? Yeah.
Yes, I'm pouring a total of 25. So there's my whole setup. And this is basically what it looks like. If I can pull it up here. So
you're adding some pigments to the.
Oh yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with it. I've got some rainbow, some blue and green. You got to kind of make it fun, because I'm doing a lot of them.
Yeah.
But that basically sets up in about 15 minutes, and then it gets demolded. And this actually, let me see if I can try and demold it back.
Yeah. Okay.
So that'll come out. Oops.
That's great.
And there's the whole piece.
That's terrific. So do you have to do anything after you take it out of the mold? I mean, prep it or anything?
Nope, that's just it. Then it's
really, that's great. All right. Well, thank you, Skylar.
Wait,
That was worth a trip to your guest bedroom.
Can we just throw in a quick comment? Skylar recently got married. So in true maker form, William had a brainstorm to create a 3D printed shield just for her to be a princess bride.
That's great.
Put it on.
Yeah, it was basically.
Hang on. I got to run through my house to find it.
It's like a decorative tiara on it that she wore for her wedding.
Yeah. Hey, one thing, I'm going to read off a couple of the the panel, some of the panelists answered a question, but they answered it to panelists, so you won't see that. Someone was asking what the size of space is. Randy Farmer responded that the Maker Station just expanded in the space next door right before this happened. Bad timing business-wise, great timing response-wise, as we have a space that was clean and open to do assembly and storage. Roswell Fire Labs is 4,200 square feet in a converted city fire station. Shop floor is the majority of the building due to the former garage for 3 fire engines. And let's say Decatur Makers is about 3,000 square feet, 300 plus members, and over 1 billion terajoules of energy. That's pretty impressive right there. So, you know, it's really great to see how all of you have cooperated, and I think that just let's say some of you are receiving and some of you are sending supplies. So you've built your own little, I think I call it the ARGA, you know, the distributed manufacturing and supply chain network. So very interesting. You've actually kept your spaces going. So with you're keeping social distancing and people are temperature checked and various things. So you believe it's pretty safe, right?
From the very beginning, all our maker spaces were taking that into account for sure. Masks, flood, shields, sanitizing, temperature for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I ask a question, Dale? I was curious.
Yeah, Dorothy, please.
I'm interested in how our spaces across the country are interacting with each other. And I know you talked a little bit about your engagement with other communities, but can you guys speak a little bit to, you know, sort of influences? I know, you know, Randy talked about his interaction with the folks over in Orlando and the Florida area, but are there other, you know, makers that you've been helping out around the country, and who's influenced you and the things that you're doing? Are there any lessons learned that you're getting from other places?
I'll jump in real quick. This is maybe not directly answering your question, Dorothy, but it does speak to a broader engagement. So when Georgia Tech was putting out their versions of things, they put it out, and it's got a huge alumni network. We've been directing, and most of our, because we're a public university, most of the PPE that we created went to Georgia Emergency Management. So we weren't the ones deciding who got what. You know, there was the state deciding where the critical needs were. But for the small things, we were sending a lot of things to ABC. We had a biological sciences PhD student who left campus when it closed, went back to the Navajo Nation, and this is where she was from in Arizona, and discovered that, you know, in Tuba City, there was a real need. And she reached back out through Georgia Tech. We bounced her to ABC, and I believe the folks were able to get her some PPE. So these kinds of connections are just, they're every day, all the time. And that's only one of many stories, but I'm sure there are other connections to other makers as well.
Yeah.
That's an amazing story.
Yeah, like that's great. Hey, Skylar, are you back with your Princess Bride shield?
Oh, you missed it. She came through with it.
Oh, she did? It didn't show up on mine. Oh, that's good. As long as everybody who is hung in there.
I think Grace had her hand up, Dale.
Grace, yes.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I was telling Dale this the other day, the silver lining of it is having conversations with other organizations that are sort of, in a roundabout way, contributors to the maker community. So the fabric store down the road, the paper product company down the road, the economic development organization down the road, like all these people are having conversations with us as a makerspace that we didn't think we were going to have with them, and they've been very collaborative, and that's been again kind of the silver lining in all this, the conversations of realizing that, you know, there's products being made just a few miles from us, kind of in our industrial park, that we didn't know about, and now they're like, oh wow, yeah, the clubhouse, right, let's work with you. And that's been really refreshing.
And I've heard that a lot, Grace, in other places too, where there's this engagement, you know, with different sort of places within the manufacturing chain, and local manufacturers that, like you said, are down the street that, you know, may have known of the makerspace or saw people coming in and out, but maybe didn't realize exactly what was being done. And so now there are these relationships that, you know, from wearing my Nation of Makers hat, I hope persist beyond, you know, the crisis. And I think really have shown how we can work together as an ecosystem, which is what we've been saying all along. So I think that's another, you know, sort of hidden success or blessing of this whole thing.
Yeah. Well, good. A question from Ray Dirksen from Chicago is asking if anyone else getting into swabs or isolation gowns. Randy answered that in the chat, so you can see. Says there's info on the
Ray,
site about that.
To put a plug out, Artisans Asylum through OSS is having their. Are you about to say it too, Dale?
Right,
tomorrow
exactly.
They're having an online workshop specifically for gown design. So
yeah, and that's Sarah Miller there is leading that, and others. I did an interview with them last week after they were on a previous episode of the Fab Lab, but they're doing marvelous work. They're running 3 shifts, 3 8-hour shifts to produce gowns in Artisans Asylum. Pretty amazing. So, Lou, anything on swabs?
The demand will be huge because testing is really the path forward, and testing requires, I mean, probably on the order of millions of swabs a day if we're going to be testing in even less than 1% of our country. So that's testing for the disease. There's also serological testing, which requires syringes and of course vaccine delivery. I mean, what we're going to be looking at going into the summer, I think, is probably the model. There's a number of models. What we're going to be looking at is that nobody knows what we're going to be looking at. That's the honest answer. But 3D printing swabs is certainly something that folks at Georgia Tech have looked at, and in a way it's kind of been dismissed only because the scale that's needed, it's just not going to happen. It's got to be met. And when you're looking at hundreds, millions or hundreds of millions, tens or hundreds of millions, it just needs to be at a manufacturing scale. But on the other hand, if there's demand for it, we're going to need it at every scale.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, well, listen, we're on the hour here. I want to thank everybody, especially and Lee and Lou and Milton, and our other guests who've joined us today, Grace and Randy and William and Josh, Dawn and Skylar, who made a guest appearance here. Thank you for all the work you're doing. It's really great to learn more about it. If you're listening, please promote the story. I think it has a lot of the photos from Lee in it. And I think it's important we learn a lot from each other. I learned even more stuff today than I learned talking to you the previous time. So thanks again for being on Plan C Live, and we'll see you on Thursday. Thank you all.
Thanks, Dale.
Bye, everyone. Thank you
Bye.
for being us.
Bye, Dorothy.
Yeah.
Bye, Dale.
Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody.
Thanks, Atlanta team.
Bye. Thanks.